Okay, dudes. I'm headed out. Headed to Juneau. Okay, folks, so I'm in Juneau. I have a couple hours before our ride comes to take us out to the camp. This is my view. Okay, so this is the main road. Eagle River United Methodist Camp. And welcome. Yeah, lots of cabins.
Yeah, that's nice.
We're done for the day. This is where we're hanging out. There's the kitchen. Oh. Here's the fireplace. And I'm sleeping on the couch. Okay. So we sleep in there.
Sleep inside, but we're gonna look for the sleeping.
Okay. This is the front of the boat. Woo! Hi, we're lost. We're going down this way. Okay, we found it. Hi, this is me. First time on an Alaska ferry. Yes. Pretty soon it'll be dark and there won't be anything to see. Bye. gave it to me for free. Okay, we're done. That's Wrangell. I'm home. Back in Wrangell. Hi. I thought I would do a recap of the farmers retreat. I made some notes so I keep myself on track. So the last little bit you saw me on the Alaska State Ferry. I was with Maria and Bo from Farragut Farm, and they've been on the ferries before, but never this particular ferry. So we wandered around a little bit lost for a while because they kind of have a public face. They're on Facebook, and I did a video on a tour from years back. I kind of included them. I asked some other people if they wanted to be in the video, and they're like, no. So I didn't get any video of other people there. I probably should have taken a picture of our little circle just from a distance. You know, there was about 25 people at the farmers retreat. But anyway, so that's where that's at. I will include Farragut Farm's Facebook page and a link to that video in the video description below. So this was the Methodist church little outfit there. There's a bunch of cabins and the main lodge where we were at. I could have stayed in one of the cabins, but it was icy and snowy. I would have had to walk out there. So it was just as easy to just sleep on the couch in the lodge, which was really nice. Although, you know, it's kind of hard. It's a different place. So I was a little sleep deprived towards the end there. Yes. So we had, sessions Friday evening when I arrived, all day Saturday, and then Sunday morning, and then we left Sunday afternoon on the ferry, or Sunday evening really. And I learned quite a lot of things. I think the biggest takeaway was just the getting to know people. I always feel like kind of a little bit of a weirdo, but I felt less like a weirdo at this place. Everybody's super nice, and I feel like I could probably send somebody an email and ask them a question. So one of the small group breakout sessions that I was in was for pests and also for cold storage. And so as far as pests, my biggest problem is probably cutworms and also maybe crane fly larvae. I don't know how much ongoing problems I'm going to have with them. So it just reiterated to me that I need to, I did a video on the whole life cycle of a spotted cutworm, but I kind of need to know like how many life cycles there are and really pin down the dates. And so that just kind of got in my head about how I need to get that figured out in future years. Also, just is the possibility of like, if we have some really freezing weather, can you freeze out some of these cutworms? They seem to live in their little larva stage through the winter as a little caterpillar stage. Having mulch on the beds, does that, keep them from freezing? So anyway, I got to kind of think about what I might be able to do about getting the cutworms under control. I've been using the row cover. That works, but I did it on the kale, and now I need to do it on my lettuces, and I need to think about having a trap plot of kale somewhere outside where the little moths, the spotted cutworm moths, can go. And so I need to kind of get those figured out, but it just did give me thinking about what I need to do. One thing somebody brought up is having issues with those small kind of worms, little red worms getting into cabbages, and not necessarily maybe creating a lot of damage, but you're cutting it up and it's like, ugh. I don't grow head cabbage, but if I do, find space in the future, I'd like to grow cabbage. And one of the suggestions was to get a variety of cabbage that has a really dense head so that those worms can't kind of just get in there. Anyway, that was something I was thinking about for the future. I think I kind of have slugs, I at least understand their whole thing and have them under control somewhat, but I'm always looking for new information. And one thing that people were bringing up is that they love horseradish and pansies. So I'd kind of like to try those as a trap crop. Right now, what I use is radishes and bok choy to attract slugs away from other crops, but I'd be interested in trying pansies and horseradish, although I know horseradish is a little bit invasive or something, so I might have to think about that. But also, people were mentioning corn gluten and just a mixture of flour and water is something that attracts slugs, and so I might want to do a little bowl of that or something for all I know. So anyway, that was the pest part. Cold storage. I'm working on my own walk-in cooler downstairs, although I've been just distracted recently. So Farragut Farm, they've been using buried fish totes to store their veggies through the winter, but it's kind of really cramped to get down in there and get it stuff. So they just recently bought a tornado shelter that they're going to bury and put underground. And so they're going to try that and see how that goes. They said the worst part of that was that the expense of having to ship it to Alaska. Somebody else was talking about, they've got a basement under the house. It's above ground, all of it, and they foamed it on the outside, and they're just looking to maybe use a cool bot to help with keeping it cool in the late fall and early spring where it's still maybe a little bit too warm. They've had luck through the winter, but to expand that use. I've got a space that's below the house, but it's up against a bank. So I'm going to have to deal with issues of water coming in. So I'll have to do some things differently. But we've talked about maybe a heat pump down below to keep it cool, because I don't need it just for the winter, fall, and spring. I need it for the summertime to keep vegetables as I'm selling them through the summer. So anyway, that was pests and cold storage. Some other specific information, just little tidbits that I thought were really helpful. I was asking about number of rows in a 30-inch bed of carrots. Farragut Farm said that they plant 7 rows. I've been going between 5 and 9. And so what they do is they do the 2 outer rows, the inner row, and then 2 rows in between those. And so I'm going to try that this year. I'm going to try 7 rows and see how it goes. They also talked about doing a stale seed bed for their carrots. So they put, I think it was a couple of layers of Typar on a bed for a long period of time, just so that the, weed seeds will sprout, and then they just end up dying because they don't have any light. And then when you plant the seeds, the carrot seed, then you're not having to battle the weeds. And I've had pretty good luck with my carrots not being too weedy, but I've been able to do the weeding when I have 5 rows. I can take a little hoe and go in between those, but when I do 9 rows, it's kind of hard to weed between those, and if I end up with any bit of clover in there, it gets to be a pain. So I'm going to try the 7 rows, and in the future maybe try the stale seed bed, kind of trying to think ahead. I have a small garden, so it's hard to be able to kind of set aside things for a later crop. But yeah, somebody asked about how to kill a bed of baby greens once you've harvested it a few times. Like, I have a lofty salad mix or baby spinach or something like that. And, if you cut it, it'll just grow back. And so she was like, how do you kill it? And I was like, I don't know. I have had to waste time pulling out all of that stuff. So it was a really good question. I was thinking, I was suggesting maybe take a wheel hoe and go through and just cut right at the root. So anyway, that may be something I'll think about in the future, but I thought that was a really good question. Somebody talked about getting a peat spreader for spreading their compost over a bed, and that it wasn't terribly expensive to get it. And so if I actually had compost in the future that I could spread over a bed, that would, that sounded really interesting. And yes, see, people talking about fall planting. This fellow Ed was planting spinach and parsnips in the fall for, them to sprout in the spring, or, they would already kind of grow, and then they would start really growing in the spring. They make it through the winter. And so he was experimenting with that. And I am experimenting with planting potatoes in the fall to see if they come back and they can make it in the summer. So that was interesting. He was talking about parsnip seeds that they grow and they go to seed and then they easily reseed themselves. So I thought that was interesting. I have a few things like orich and bok choy that are quick enough to make seed that they do it within a season. So it was interesting to hear about the parsnips. Somebody else, Jen, was talking about a certain type of parsnip seed called Tender and True, which she really likes, which has become hard to get. One thing I learned from Farragut Farm, just talking to them directly, was that they also have problems with their sugar snap peas getting what I call blight, where it just starts killing the leaves, especially going from the bottom up. Sometimes it's been so quick that I can hardly get a crop before it just kills the plants. They said that they didn't have quite that problem, but they definitely get that. And so I had thought that it was maybe my soil I got it into, maybe it'd come with the seed or something, but it sounds like it's just our really wet environment that causes it. And so I'm a little bit less concerned now that I've introduced something into my garden that I shouldn't have, that this is just a problem that everybody's going to have in a wet climate. And also they were talking about having the same problem that I have with the potato skins coming off. And I didn't know quite what that was about, but I guess, because it's so wet here, the skin of the potato doesn't have time to really kind of harden. And so what they're doing is they've experimented with potatoes covered in a tunnel at the end so that those skins are able to get hard. And then when they harvest them, they can wash them without the skins peeling off. So I don't have a tunnel to do that, but I wonder if you could do it with maybe just covering potato plants with a tarp or something in the fall. Anyway, something to think about. Somebody else was talking about doing, rather than taking everything to a compost bin, just doing a lot of chop and drop and letting things compost in place. And that got me thinking, gosh, rather than, I need to build up my hugelkultur that I have beside my garden, and I could just cut stuff and just take it over there. And then I was thinking, like if I have clover or something else that I could just throw in that pile. And so then I was pretty excited about that until I started thinking about the deer, because that's outside the fence and the deer would just come eat it. So I would have to fence that hugelkultur into my garden. So that was something to think about. Yes. Oh, yes. And so Ed also was talking about growing barley. And I've always been interested in grain or legume that I could grow here. I don't remember if he talked about why in particular he was growing barley, but he brought some seeds. And so if I have a chance, I'm going to try and grow these. He said, definitely don't fertilize the ground or anything. And he harvests them in September. If it's dry enough, maybe I'll see how it goes if I can get it done. So anyway, those are some of the specific things that I thought were interesting that people talked about. So there are a few government-related topics, I guess you could say. Some people talked about some grants that are available in Alaska, including the micro grants for food security, which I applied for a year or so back. And I may try and apply for that again. The other thing that we talked about is problems, with ease of shipping between all of our little communities. There were people there from Ketchikan, Sitka, myself from Wrangell, Juneau, Haines, and just, some of these are little islands that, it's easier sometimes to get stuff from down south than it is to ship between communities. And so just talking about, couldn't Alaska Airlines make that easier for us, maybe more affordable, and also the ferry being set up to be able to ship things cold. Oh yes, and so speaking of shipping between our communities in Alaska, somebody brought up the importance of buying product or inputs from within Alaska. Somebody mentioned, for example, Seeds and Soil Farm, which grows seed up in Palmer, Alaska. And I was thinking I probably should at least look into buying local seed. It's kind of hard because over the years I've spent a lot of time trialing different varieties that I've gotten from, say, Territorial or Johnny's seed companies. Not that there's anything wrong with those companies, but it would be nice to get some stuff that's local. Anyway, so just some discussion about that. There was some general advice that I thought was really helpful that I'd like to kind of revisit in the future. You know, we're just talking about like burnout from, you know, working hard and maybe not making as much money as we'd like. And somebody was saying, you know, we need to look at the next 20 years and can you see yourself doing what you're doing in the next 20 years? And so definitely the program has to be kind of sustainable if, you know, we want to be able to have not be burnt out for 20 years straight or something. That if, you know, we're miserable in this work, that how are we going to inspire younger people to be farmers and gardeners if we're just like, oh, not making enough money and burnt out. Another person was talking about, you know, look at your financial goal or the goal that you want to, how much you want to sell, what you want to sell, and work backwards. What then would you need to grow? And I've always been just like, how much can I grow in this little tiny space? As my garden has gotten bigger, I kind of really do need to think about what is my financial goal, and then what crops would I need to, and how much of it would I need to sell in order to meet that goal. I'd like to do that maybe next winter when I have some time. Yeah. And then somebody else also talked about identifying small inefficiencies, which I know I have a bunch of small inefficiencies. Some of them it's just because I'm working in a situation that I haven't been able to change yet, like not having enough cold storage space, or my wash station not being set up properly, and things like that. So as I can fix those, but there's also other things like harvesting, you know, baby greens, you know, and it taking so long. Just being able to find those specific things and make them more efficient. So that was a nice thing to have in my head. So at the very end of the retreat, we went around the circle and each person talked about kind of a short-term goal and maybe a more of a long-term goal, something that we want to accomplish. So mine was, you know, I really need to think about getting a modern little tractor or rototiller, because the one that we have is like held together by strings and it's super dangerous and I can't use it myself. So it's just not very handy. And oftentimes I thought to myself, well, I'm just really going to go no-till, so I don't really need to invest in something like that. But I always end up finding each year that I just need it for something. And also I just need something to be able to form my beds. The more beds that I have, the harder it is to like shovel all the pathways onto the beds. And so I just really I think I really need to think about that. And so I'd like to do it sooner than later, maybe that's something I could apply for the micro grant for food security. My longer term goal, I think it's just going to take me a while to get that cold storage done. I just haven't made the progress I'd like. And so I just really need to, I mean, really that should be more of a short-term goal, but it's realistically a long-term goal. And also I was thinking how, I don't know if there's any interest in the community in Wrangell for like a weekly community market. We have a market once a month. And I don't know, I like being able to sell from the garden, selling online and then people picking up at the garden. I did that for the first time last season after spending years, you know, going around and distributing it in the community. But, you know, I don't know if I would change that, but there's been times I've had excess veg that I'd like to sell, and I've only been kind of lucky sometimes that there's a market that happens to be that week. And so, yeah, I don't know if there's enough, you know, people who'd want to sell that often and people who'd want to go to a market that often to make it viable, but it would be kind of nice to have that available. Next February will be the bigger summit, the Southeast Alaska Farmers Summit, and that, I don't know quite where that's going to be. I think they may have said, but I can't remember. But that's in February next year. So yeah, I'll talk to you guys next week.